So what we are going to start with this morning is a bit of a different approach that I would like you guys to adopt. Now, I've developed this process of how do I solve mathematical problems. Because I promise you, if you are a 50 to 60%er, even if you are maybe an 80%er, but usually the guy's going between 50 and 70 in maths, one of the biggest problems that I have found in the past is you get a question and you have no place where to start. You sit in your exam and you go, I don't even know where to begin. And then you just write a whole lot of stuff down and go, I hope and pray that I'm going to get something right. Okay, if I write enough nonsense, my teacher is going to give me marks. And I understand that approach, but I can promise you it's not the right approach. I always refer back, not last year we had a girl at the previous school where I was at. She was the hardest working learner I've ever come across. Before an exam, you guys know the examination aid textbooks that has 10 paper 1 and 10 paper 2 question papers. She would come to me and go, so do you have extra exam papers? I'm like, but we gave you guys that book. She's like, I've worked through the whole book. Okay? There's a website. Then I tell her about an amazing website I'll tell you guys about later on that has like hundreds of question papers. And before the prelim exam, she'd come and she'd be like, so do you have extra exam papers? I'm like, but I gave you that. And she's like, but so I've worked through so many of those papers. Don't you have extras? I'm like, no. But in an exam, she would sit with the problem of, I marked her prelim, and she would write 3 pages on a 5-mark question and still get it wrong. Not because she isn't prepared, because of her approach towards the question. Because you've got to understand that how maths marking works is if you're not going in the right direction, we don't give you any marks. It doesn't help just writing stuff down and hoping and praying, because if you're not going in the right direction, we put a red mark through it and we say sorry. That's how it works, because otherwise everyone can write anything down and we've got to give marks. So what I would like to share with you guys this first half an hour or so is something that I promise you, if you apply this not just to maths but to your life, I promise you, you will have more success than before. Now, I have termed this approach the monkey behind the mountain. Okay, the monkey behind the mountain. Now, it's a bit of an oddball approach, and I promise you, initially you are going to feel like, but sir, it's wasting time. But I promise you, as you get more practiced in this, you're going to see how much this helps you. Now, the monkey behind the mountain comes from this problem. When you guys practice for exams and you work through textbooks, all of the maths questions looks as beautiful as that monkey that is on the... He's so cute. Am I right? Then when you get to the exam, that monkey, all of a sudden, looks like that. Am I right? But so I don't even see the monkey. Exactly. I don't even see the stuff where I'm going. I don't even know, because this doesn't look familiar. So I'm used to that. How many of you have felt that way when you get back to after a maths paper and you go to your teacher and you go, what the hell? Sir or ma'am, you never taught us this stuff. I've never seen this stuff before. Because you look at that problem, but the teacher actually expects you to find the monkey behind the mountains. So now the question is, what do I mean by the monkey behind the mountains? There's 2 things in the scenario. Number 1, the monkey. Okay? The monkey is let's just wait for them to come in. It's 100%, no worries. Okay? There we go. Okay? The monkey behind the mountain is a process of thought, where the first question you must always ask yourself is, what is the monkey? In other words, what is the real thing that a teacher is asking me to solve? Okay, now it can be something as easy as solve for x, or it could be something as difficult as where they say, find the range. Or it could be something like, where is this thing undefined? Now, finding the monkey, taking 2 seconds or 5 seconds to write down what the monkey is. Number 1, gives you direction. And it also then, you know what your final step should be. If it says solve for x, then you know your final thing should be therefore x is this. Or if they ask you to find a length, therefore the length is equal to this. Because I've had countless students in my class that have come 95% of the way, but they didn't finish the sum off. But if you don't know where to start, finding the monkey is a worthwhile thing because it gives you direction. Because it doesn't help, Sunshine, if you want to go to Cape Town and you get on a taxi to Pietersburg, to Polokwane. But that's what some of you guys do. You get a maths problem and then you just jump into the thing. Halfway you go, but I'm further away from the solution than I was at the beginning. And then you've wasted 5 minutes of your exam, and then you don't finish and you go to the teacher, yeah, but the test is too long. Yes, that was my grade 9s. Okay. Now, ladies and gents, the second part of the thing is, so the monkey gives you direction, but the mountains tells you which tools in your toolbox do you need to do. The mountains gives you the problems that you need to sort out to get to the real problem. So it's all the obstacles that's standing in the way of the real solution. And here comes the thing. The better you are at listing these things down, the more marks you're going to get. Because the mountains are where we give marks. Those obstacles that's in your way is where 80 to 90% of all the maths marks goes into. And the better you are at writing them down, the better you know, oh, I've got to use this. I've got to use this. If I continue with my analogy of going to Cape Town, if you want to go to Cape Town, what are you going to do? How are you going to get there? You can book a flight or climb on a bus. Are you going to go on your bicycle? You can get there. I promise you, my one friend ran to Cape Town. It took him about, I think it took him about 20 or 30 days. He ran to Cape Town. Okay? Dead serious. He still even thinks now that he was crazy. He got there, but it takes me 2 hours if I climb on an airplane. The same thing happens in maths. If you don't see the obstacles and you just run into this thing, you sometimes take 3/4 of a page on a 3-mark sum. Where if you took 2 minutes, or not even 2 minutes, half a minute to properly think about how I get there, you get the right tool to get to where you want to go. My one friend studied to become a doctor. He's now a specialized surgeon. And I asked him, what's the difference between a doctor that gets 60% and a doctor that gets 80 to 90%? And he said to me, it's simple. The doctor gets 60%, can give you 3 possible diagnoses for a specific set of symptoms. Where a doctor that gets 80 to 90 gives you 5 or 6 possibilities. But the problem is, you need to know your theory to be able to apply this correctly. And that's where a big problem lies, unfortunately, at the moment. Because even my grade 8 and 9, but maths is not a study subject. Maths is the subject with the most amount of studying in all of your subjects. There you go. But I've got history, sir. Yes. And I've got maths. In maths, you've got to know 12 years worth of work to write your final exam. In history, you only need to know 1 year's worth of work. But the problem is, we don't know all our theory. But ladies and gents, that's why we are here. I'm not here to make you feel stupid, please. I'm here to maybe have a pit stop to say, there's still, listen to me carefully, everyone listening? 80% of your maths mark still lies ahead of you. 80%. Your final exam counts 75% of your year mark. Your prelim counts 30% of your portfolio. That means your portfolio, which counts 25, let's do the maths, 82.5% of your year's marks still lies ahead of you. But so I've sucked. I've only gotten 50%, but I need 60 or 70 to get into varsity. And you can still get that. I had a student who eventually pulled his finger out of his ear and jumped from 65 to 79% just in his final exam, because he actually started studying correctly. So what we are going to do now for the next 5 or so minutes is I'm going to give you guys a grade 11 problem. The grade 11 problem, and understand what we are going to do for this next coming few days, is I gave all of you, should have gotten one of these books that says Matric Revision. Understand that you are not going to find this book anywhere else, because I wrote this book myself. So please write your name somewhere big, because if someone else maybe loses theirs, they might come after yours. This is hot property. I'm just putting it out there. But ladies and gents, this book consists of 2 parts. Number 1, the front part, which is the theory part. Section A, which goes, I think, from page 3 to page 23 or 24. And then there's a part B, which is exercises. Now, what we are going to do is, I'm not going to go through all the theory. I really can't. But what we are going to do is, please, you have this open next to you. But I don't want you guys to now, please, go and actually solve this problem. We are going to do that. But let's go through the exercise. What is the monkey? In other words, what is the real thing that I would like to solve? Range. Now, what is the range of any relation, any functional graph? The what y values? Let's be more specific. The y values of the graph, let's be more specific. Okay, thank you, here he's getting it. The maximum y value and the minimum y value. Because when I do range for my students, I tell them, write it in interval notation. Y is an element of minimum and maximum. Automatically, now I know where I've got to go. I know where I've got to go. I've got to find y values. But now what are the mountains? What are the mountains? Come on, guys, it's kind of logic. What are the two things that I actually need to determine? The minimum and the? Well, they are my two mountains. Minimum and maximum. But now let's drill deeper. Let's not stop there. If I look at this graph, there's two things. There's the minimum. I know the minimum of my graph is negative infinity. How do I know that, Sunshine? What kind of a graph is it? A negative graph. Be careful, you've got to look at your words. It's not a negative graph because it actually does go positive at times. The shape of the graph is, it's an upside down parabola, a frowning parabola. So will it have a minimum value? No. There, I've already solved one of the mountains. But now here comes the tricky part. What about the maximum? It's turning point. Okay, so the maximum is at the turning point, right? Now I've got to ask myself, and here's now another mountain. How do I determine the turning point? Okay, so now, and here, if you are in 80% and you want to go to 90 or 95, what are the three methods to find the turning point of any graph? First derivative equal to 0. So there's the 1. What is the second one? Be more specific, my man. X is equal to negative b over 2a. And thirdly, thank you, complete the square. I know that you guys hate completing the square. I know it. But listen to me carefully. When you go and study engineering, completing the square is part and parcel of integration. So you have to be able to do that with your eyes closed. But now that's only to find the x value. You still then haven't answered the question, which is the y value. So now I need to determine the y value, which either I could do by subbing in f of whatever, or by just looking at the square that you've completed. If you're an 80 to an 85%er, my suggestion to you is, in any sum you do, find at least 2 methods to do it. Because that pushes you to not just fall into a rhythm, so that when we ask you something weird, you are fully practiced. Now, ladies and gents, here comes the trick. I have now laid out for you the whole road you need to take to actually answering the question. You need to find an x value. Then you need to find the y value for the maximum. Then you need to write it in a proper format. You guys are all with me? Go for it. I'm giving you guys 3 minutes. Please write down for me the range of that specific graph. It's about half a minute left. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. I'm going to go towards x equal to negative b over 2a. Okay, if you went towards derivative, that's 100% right. If I were you, I would actually just always go towards derivatives. For turning points, for minimums, for maximums, go towards differentiation. I'm not going to go there because we're only doing differentiation tomorrow. Okay? So for today, I'm going to go towards going x is equal to negative b over 2a. Now, x is equal to negative 2 over 2 times negative 1. Now, please, I'm looking more at the ladies than I am at the men because the men are lazy, the ladies are not. Sorry if that sounds sexist at all. Do not, listen to me carefully, do not write out every single step of your working out. Go to your calculator and get an answer. So this answer is 2 over negative 2, so it's negative 1. Let's quickly pause for a moment. What have I now gotten? It's not just the x value of the turning point. What else do we call it? The axis of symmetry. Okay, so there's another thing that you've just got to put a pin in it. The axis of symmetry. Now to get the y value, I do f of negative 1, which is again negative 1 squared, minus 2 times negative 1 plus 5. Again, don't go and write out every step. Go in your calculator, get an answer, especially in your exams. So this is 1, so it's negative 1 plus 2. So this is 1 plus 5 is 6. So what do I have? I now have negative 1 comma 6 as being my turning point. And again, half of the matrics go, woo, and they go over to the next question. But we actually haven't answered the question. The question is determine the range. So now I know, because that's my monkey, that has to be my final step. So y is an element of, now it doesn't have a minimum, so it's negative infinity. The highest value it goes is 6, and it actually does touch that 6. Now I've asked myself, have I answered the question? Yes. I have now answered the initial question, and I move on to the next one.